say hello. How is everybody? I am, I've got, I've got a thought in mind. As I've been listening to, um, the Iranian Revolution people, like the counter revolution, not the Revolutionary Guard, like see, they got a good grift going on with the word revolution in English because if they are the revolution, then they always have a right. It's just perpetual. It's perpetual protest, right? It's just like they exist to make sure that people that want a different political idea don't get a voice. It's like, okay, you have the leader of the system of government that you want. It has elections. You have a religious leader who picks the candidates. And the theocratic oligarchy at the top calls, does the will of the spiritual leader in this process, and they filter out whatever. Right now, we all have gatekeepers, right? The way money and psychic focus have been working for a very long time is political parties. And so, there's you having an influence on the political parties, and naturally there's going to be the old money there, right? And the old money wants its anonymity because the old money doesn't want to know that it's been financing ideas that are an evil upon you, or will amount to an evil upon you because you don't have informed consent. And then the unfortunate problem is that you've got a very complicated world in which you don't understand the informed consent. You've got a big problem if you do not understand the people and the things that they have to offer, right? And this is kind of part of the psychosis happening in Iran between these forces. Hey, how's it going, Shane Carter? I'm about to speak on a proposition to be thrown into the ether for the benefactors of the Lion in the Sun revolution, not the Islamic revolution. To operate with the circumstances that I am assessing from pro-Western sources. And what I think is that based on the assessment of the saving face paradigm for the dynamics of being a cult leader, for the purpose of getting anything along with whatever leverage the Ayatollah or the person who is the benefactor of the Ayatollah's vegetation has the power of. And I think that there's something that was not completed with the with everything that was initialized for the new Ayatollah. So even if this Ayatollah has enough consciousness to talk about stuff, he didn't get something before shit blew up and lost all of the shadow power of the entire dynasty. That's what I think, right? So the spiritual godhead of the Twelvers' theocratic system has been shattered, and the natural divisive inauthenticity and lies about the whole thing is breaking things apart. This is from people that understand the conversation because they speak fluent Farsi and fluent English. Fluent. When you're fluent in both, meaning you can think in two languages, now you've crossed a certain threshold of understanding things, right? And so the only people speaking Farsi and English that the left are listening to are people that are like die-hard Islamic Republic people. They're not listening to the revolution people. But the revolution people have been listening to both sides. Because, of course, they have to listen to the side which is the competing psychic warfare that this is all about. And as impressive as an athletic specimen as I am, I'm way better at psychic warfare. Excuse me. So what they have to do is they're going to have to finagle things. They basically they have to fool their everyone that they've been lying to into thinking that this was something different than it is, while dealing with making concessions like they're going to have an American and an Israeli person like go into Iran completely protected. Right? Look, it would not shock me if before these midterms, Donald Trump is walking the streets of Tehran safely. Wouldn't shock me. So you need to have a guy appointed. You need to put a guy in who is effectively an asset that what's left of the hierarchy trusts. Look, I believe you. I believe that you're going to be able to fool a lot of the people because they've been fooling a lot of the people. At least the ones that are these psychotic true believers in the Twelverism and have literally fucking taken it this goddamn far. Right? Fundamentalist fanatics are fundamentalist fanatics. Right? And how much time have anybody in our government spent wanting to understand how they think, regardless of what they think about it because of their biblical worldviews, and there's always that underlying thing that as a Christian they have some resentment for you because you're not with the program on the prophet system, and you're not supposed to worship Jesus at all, right? And then it becomes holy with a W, divine teacher relationship only. No form of worship all obsessed into what he said in the context of the conversation spoken and who the person and the context of the time as scripted was. So if your mind is operating on, if you're on that operating system, which all people of the book are, because religion inherently requires fascism, because it requires some sort of uniformity groomed into the body politic of it to be fashioned in according to the thing. And they took those principles and they went on their spiritual high about it, right? It's exactly what everybody in the left fears about Donald Trump, especially fears about somebody who wears it on his sleeve like Charlie Kirk, right? Because the left in their psychotic haze are just these traumatized hearts with a net of madness separating them from healing. And then it's turned into all of this, right? Which is changed the dynamics of having any conversation about aspects of the in-between gender world. Okay? There are two genders, and then there are the in-betweens of this polarity, which is hermetically consistent. And we can talk about why it pops up, because it's obviously an anomaly of sorts. It's not most people's inherent disposition to have an androgynous nervous system. And then, of course, it is the exception, not the rule, to be that hermaphrodites can be born, naturally occurring hermaphrodites, which honestly, hermaphrodism, I just think, is a genitalia-specific conditioning of a Siamesism, meaning that you had a brother or sister potentiality in your zygote phase that terminated, but it had time to code genitalia. And then the form was presented, but the chromosomes were not. Or you've got some strange chromosomal abnormality that is not the same chromosomal abnormality that you experience with the case of those with Down syndrome. So anyway, what's my point about all of this wild shit, right? This is me talking in a kind of socio-psychological, crowd psychological kind of mindset, understanding how these things work. There are ways you control the mind on a collective level. There's ways you control the mind on the individuated level as well. If you do not have the ability to have any level of admixture with the whole, then you're going to starve yourself because you're denying, you're in an anti-cosmic state, right? I can have all sorts of harsh things that I say about very specific circumstances of a person's state of will or being or care or what they're doing in a present moment, just by illustrating specifically the context in which these harsh words apply, right? And it's all me saying, well, here's a behavior that's inappropriate because of X, Y, and Z circumstances, as opposed to when the behavior happens here or with this and that person. Like, when is it appropriate for a man to get into a fight? When is it that I raise my voice and I throw my fist and the woman in my life encourages me to do it or stays my strong hand? And do you have the fucking self-control when that arises and the wisdom to listen to her? Because at times like that, you typically don't want to doubt a woman who is dedicated to you. Trust me. Let's see. Excuse me. So, you get one of our intelligence assets and you make him the guy that has been the one calling the shots of the Ayatollah. He has to surrender to the U.S. government and the Israeli government. Quietly, he's doing this. He's doing this on the dark side, on the down low. He has to be somebody who is willing to come into our camp and trust us in the surrender, right? It's just like, all right, you want to do this with no fucking shame. You guys live in exile. These guys have to pay for fucking crimes against humanity. Maybe we'll say that you were killed, but you definitely don't fucking exist anymore after this. But you got your one fucking guy who was the guy who was gonna turn himself in and agree to be the puppet. And it'll be a conspiracy fact that the whole world will know. Like, you know, like what is baseline understanding of Donald Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Here's baseline understanding of the new Ayatollah's relationship with the United States as this guy starts feeding everybody the line, but he does it in a real slick way with the rhetoric. And it'll still do the chaos that it's going to do, but it doesn't matter because it's understood that it's over and that this is the beginning of the transition. It may or may not be ultra ugly, but whether Iran likes it or not, it's going into transition. Right? That would be the way to fucking do it. You turn one of their own into our asset. And then you find you know, and then you figure out a handful of loyalty things by that. You're going to have a tracker thingamajiggy on him. You're going to have a whole shadow network to a shadow base that's going to be somewhere in the fucking mountains or something like that. And we're going to keep tabs on this government. Then you do the transition. And you get a popular election of Prince Pavlovy, who is not allowed because of preconditions of establishing the government to be anything more than a one-term transitional president. So Prince Pavlovy does a one-term transition. He never runs after that initial win. And sets it all up, which the people of Iran will fucking love, because his grandfather wanted it that way in the fucking first place. But just because he didn't get that doesn't mean it was because he thought it was time. Like, it was just too early. It was too early for all that. The people that would have liked it that way probably would not have been able to handle another fucking Islamist revolution, right? Because this guy is a different kind of Shiite, right? Okay. And so yeah, so you get Prince Reza in there, right? There's gonna have to be some nonsense that happens, right? There's gonna, like, it's entirely possible that there just may end up just being that kind of an agreement where they get like 65% of the IRGC to go with the fake Ayatollah to sell the whole thing. It's like, oh yeah, it's gonna be nationalists or whatever, right? So that's what I would do. So that's what I would have CIA and Mossad do inside the country. And all of this, the problem is, of course, the globalist Zionists and what they want something to look like versus what I think sounds like it's right. And so anything I say is in the hopes that it can be done and keep people stay free, right? It's a question of the informed consent situation, right? It's a question of what is the split difference between the quote Jewish Zionist conspiracy and what Zionism means for people that realized that they were being quite irrational with their grievances against the Shah. Because you're talking about a peasant class that was that got a socioeconomic education that was not guarding well the mind against going with communism or not, right? And that's, it's a struggle. It's a struggle today. It's a struggle then. It's not as easy as whatever, right? There's not a lot of parallel example curriculums to work with, right? And a lot of people are just terrified of, more people becoming flat earthers, and then we lose our space program, even though we lost our space program during this period of time where we had confirmed that the Earth is a globe because we finally got off of it. Right? Before the Gemini programs, we were still not convinced that the Earth is by far, absolute, and definitely round. And that's the way we talked about it, it with the Gemini programs leading into Apollo. Anyway, fueling, what does that mean? Do you believe in the moon landings? No, I don't believe in the moon landings. Um, Everything about our trajectory of our relationship with the moon and space um, hit a brick wall after what, Apollo 17? All of that like just kind of hit a dead end, didn't it? Why? What, why did we stop and the Russians stop? For like, we have a strange global agreement while having global differences, and the big difference is psychologically not seeing worlds a certain way and thinking that one inherently is in unhappiness, right? A lot of communists that don't understand, right? And then they lie to themselves about who in their society isn't as equal to them as they think that they are. That's the communists' problem, is that they don't believe that it happens, right? This is because they get rid of people that don't fit the mold to prove that it's working. So you couldn't fucking get all the homeless out, make the homeless completely disappear, right? When the homeless disappeared in our country, I mean, some people assumed that they were kind of cleansed out, taken out. But but typically that's not the case. I think that just it goes into a black hole because, like typically a homeless person is got their own affairs, one way or the other. They are also mentally ill. Dude, there's so many fucking problems with why a homeless person is in the state that they're fucking in. Um, and there's a problem when there's a place for homeless people to go and they refuse to go there. It means something's up. They're holding on to something that isn't welcome there. And probably it's not welcome there because they're trying to keep the place a sanctuary for people that want to not be on a downward spiral. Because there's one place you belong if you're homeless, if you're trying to build, and one place you belong when you're homeless, when you're destroying yourself. Now, communism is entirely a place for people on a downward spiral to live in denial about it. And they do what they can to prop up what they can. And then, of course, in our system, there's no guarantees, but also there's so much self-evident support that you can't measure in government statistics. And that's a point that is greatly missing. But anyway, it's all a moot point at this point because, with the exception of the countries that we have been dealing with thus far, like Venezuela and Cuba and such, all of them have been slowly acclimating to having businesses with incredible amounts of money. And it's not necessarily measured in money in communism because it's central planning, but it's how much the government allows it to grow, and thus the lifestyle accommodation for those that are putting in the work to make it grow, because the CCP becomes the shareholding entity for the unicorporation of the nation's industry. And it's basically capitalism, not free market enterprise, but capitalism with heavy central planning, as opposed to what America does, which is unfortunately also capitalism, but with low central planning. And that's one of the reasons why those industries make us viscerally angry. But because the left will miss the point, the argument is misplaced, and then it sounds like you're defending the evils from either side. And that's in accordance because also we're not being direct about the superseding values on any other given particular issue that has to be in play because of how much it's asking the state to up the terms of give me money or else. So anyway, I'm gonna go take care of some things. That's my whole argument for transitional government in Iran in a way that somehow doesn't get too many people killed. Okay, bye.